Monday afternoon, 2 to 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a good weekend. Browns, not a great preseason game, number one, losing to the Packers, but for that second preseason game coming up Saturday against the Vikings, also here at home. Here's a look at some practice. Deshaun Watson getting some work in, throwing the football around, finds Elijah Moore, and here we go. So told you, finds Elijah Moore in the drills portion of this. Here, a guy that's flashed a little bit, Matt Landers, big body, some speed. This time going drills one-on-one, he finds Amari Cooper, who is being covered by Martin Emerson. Here it's Deshaun Watson finding Cedric Tillman, who also has had some pretty good showing. Looking to Pierre Strong here, this one in 7-on-7s. Browns will be thrown to the running backs quite a bit here. Team drills also finds Pierre Strong. And we wrap things up 7-on-7 red zone drill. He finds Amari Cooper, and Cooper able to make the grab. Let's welcome in, actually before we welcome in Jeff Lloyd, Wednesday and Thursday, the Browns will have joint practices here in Cleveland against the Vikings ahead of Saturday's game against the Vikings. Deshaun Watson will get the majority of the reps with the number one offense. Stefanski talked about the value of those joint practices today.
I like that you can have controlled settings. I like that both sides can feel confident that their quarterbacks are going to stay upright. And I like that you can script practice and get a bunch of different situations, whether it be third down, 2-minute, what have you. If for us, sometimes you go through a game and you don't get a 2-minute per se, or the 3rd and 3 doesn't show up for you, those type of things. So it allows us to really get intentional work, if you will.
Now let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Jeff, the joint practices means we're going to see a lot of the same guys that played in preseason game 1 playing in preseason game 2. They're going to take their work in the joint practices.
Well, in essence, you're going to get better work if you're a veteran in the joint practices than you are in the exhibition game. You're going to see more reps over the period of the 2 days. Anybody who was maybe even classified as a Browns starter, what did they see? Maybe single-digit reps on Saturday. This, you're probably going to see anywhere probably from 25 to 40 reps on Wednesday, 25 to 40 reps on Thursday if your body's good and you're willing to go in both. And like Coach said, and if you see the way, preseason games, obviously the NFL still plays in the way they play regular season games. High school, that's not necessarily the case. Usually they have the one team line up, they run 10 plays on offense, and the other team goes and they run 10 plays on offense. You're trying to find a way to get yourself the best possible work you can. And, Coach made a great point. You don't always maybe get a 2-minute scenario. Also, the game, what if you give up an opening drive score, then you fumble or you turn the ball over on the first play? You can go the entire first quarter and maybe not run, maybe more than 1 or 2 offensive plays. So it's much better to do it this way. I think, and it's weird now because it is the 3 games. That third game was always basically considered the dress rehearsal game anyway. And it seems that's when Deshaun's going to play. And hopefully, we'll start to see some, other veterans making their way back. But you got to think about it. Anybody who's not in practice as of today, they probably weren't playing this week anyway. So you're probably looking more to where you're going to be maybe next week at this time and hoping you can get at least as many guys as possible. Just a small taste of some live action against Seattle.
Well, Kevin Stefanski was asked the approach for preseason game number 3, including plans for Deshaun Watson.
We have a plan. We've been pretty consistent with what we've done over the years, give or take a few players, give or take a few reps and those type of things. So we have a plan. I think it's important to see how you come out of the practice this week before you really make the final say on what you're going to do in that last week.
Can you share if you will play Deshaun in that third and final?
Yeah, that's the plan. Yep.
There you have it. And I can tell you what it's contingent on. It's contingent on getting your offensive line through game number 2 and making sure the offensive line is healthy.
I don't think anybody is, in any rush right now to, probably run Deshaun Watson out there. And no disrespect to James Hudson, because we're in a situation now where, we know James Hudson is not a left tackle. And no disrespect to, there were times last year where he held down pretty good at the right tackle spot. The game at Baltimore, where the Browns basically told the Ravens defense we're running Jerome Ford off the right side and we're running it all, behind Wyatt Teller and behind, James Hudson, and it worked. And it worked significantly well, so much of the fact that Baltimore did not stop at that entire second half of that game. That certainly has a lot to do with it. But, we talked about this a lot here. Everybody wants to try to put this timetable. The timetable is September 8th. It's not. It was never April. It was never May. It was never, early July, late July. It was never early August. It's all about getting him in optimal shape for September 8th. And if anybody saw, his recent, podcast where he sat down with Quincy Avery and, basically where they were trying to, chart and number every throw he was making, this has been a plan that has long been in place. And it certainly doesn't help the way the offensive line is playing right now. And the fact that they are missing a lot of guys there as well. And it's just really a very weird situation because over the first 4 years of this Barry Stefanski regime, one of the absolute top shelf strengths of this team was the offensive line. And, kind of maybe it's getting its comeuppance, so to speak, that now this is becoming one of the bigger talking points about just when they're expecting some of their top talent back and will they, mesh back into the unit we've kind of grown accustomed to.
Well, to your point, Browns lost Luke Whippler, who was in line to be their backup center, to an ankle injury. He'll require surgery. That's the second center the Browns have lost. Andrew Berry was quick to address the position. Browns agreed to a trade with the Seahawks to reacquire Nick Harris, who's been here before. Harris in a 2026 seventh rounder for a 2026 sixth rounder. Nick Harris today talked about being back with the Browns and ready to go quickly.
I got the news, packed up my stuff, got on a red eye, got here this morning at 6. At the walkthrough now, I'm talking to y'all. I'm glad to have a job, have an opportunity to come back and just compete in a place I'm comfortable in, and feels good to see all my teammates again and see everybody around the building. So, I can't complain at all.
When did you kind of get the hint that this was a possibility?
2 days ago. Yeah, 2 days ago. I kind of was talking to some people and saw what might happen.
So, Jeff, Conklin was outside with the team, not practicing, but present in team drills. So he's out there for the first day. Still no Jedrick Wills. Posic's the only healthy center that has been here. Now you bring Harris. How concerned do we become about the health of that line at this point?
Well, I mean, you look down, you look at it, and it's August 12th. And the Browns are going to play September 8th. And that's when it all means certainly everything. But to this point, you still have Jedrick Wills and you have Jack Conklin in street clothes. It's crazy, and that we're actually going to put it, in this realm. But by Jedrick Wills not being around, I think Jedrick Wills has probably become a ton more appreciated than probably most of the time here. Because if you're going to say, oh, well, I get Wills or I get Conklin, you're going to say you want Jedrick Wills. And it's not a knock on Jack Conklin. It's just that you have DeJuan Jones. You do not have a guy that can go in there and at least give you 75%, 80% of what Jed Wills has. At least they have not shown that yet to this point. The Browns did bring in a tackle or two last week for workouts. So it's certainly a position they're still, approaching and looking at. But, you certainly have to be a tad bit nervous. I mean, your quarterback is taking some hits. He's certainly taking some bumps and bruises. You don't have either of your tackles. You have Posick, certainly. You have Wyatt Teller. You'll have Joel Bitonio. I think bringing back Nick Harris was a smart, easy, logical move. Certainly there was a move made in Seattle, which put Harris further down the depth chart out there in Seattle. He was part of the same draft class as Jedrick Wills, so obviously they have a relationship. I think people forget just how much Nick Harris practiced as the starting center for this team. When they had their first practice after COVID, remember J.C. Treader had just had surgery. So basically Nick Harris was basically the center every day but Friday and Sunday for this team. And then he finally got his opportunity for 2022, 3 plays into it, blew out his knee. Ethan Posick basically took the job and ran with it. But it's almost, it seemed kind of odd, and you see the smile on Nick Harris's, face. It was kind of like, some of these baseball players, these Latin baseball players who cannot get over to spring training right away because there's visa issues or whatever. Just seemed like, maybe Nick Harris was basically a late arrival to training camp this year.
Well, the Browns made a number of roster moves today. So they signed a linebacker, Brandon Boyer-Randall. They signed Fan Hicks, who they had in before. They signed a safety, Chase Williams. They waived Vincent Gray with an injury designation. They waived Marcus Haynes, defensive end. The long snapper they brought in, Sunahara, a local kid, they waived him. And the contract of John Kelly Jr., running back who ran the ball a ton in that first preseason game, terminated. You kind of alluded to it. I would expect them to look at some tackles. They're looking for bodies that are healthy. You do have a couple of guys who can play, but you're always looking for younger developmental tackles too.
Yeah, they're in a tough spot, and it might not even be the younger developmental route right now because, that's not going to be the case. If anything, as we look at this, 3 weeks and change away, from opening day, they could conceivably need somebody to play. I don't think anybody, again, is in any rush to run James Hudson out there as your starting left tackle against the Dallas Cowboys. Thankfully, Micah Parsons does most of his damage against the right side of the line, but that's certainly something that's going to, certainly give you the creepy and the crawly, so to speak. It's getting late early as far as the health of these offensive tackles. And what Jed Wills did was admirable, trying to hold off on surgery last year. He was trying to hopefully rehab himself to the point where he knew he was still going to need surgery, but he thought that maybe he could get himself healthy enough to play and close out the stretch. And then finally it was said, look, you just can't. You just haven't come far enough along. So ended up getting the surgery later than probably he should have, while he was looking out for the better part of the team for what was the 23 season. But now here it's lingering into the 24 season. We did hear last week that Jed was close. I don't know how we determine close when all I've got is, my 2 starting tackles in street clothes. And at least for Jed Wills, he doesn't have a sleeve that goes, basically from his ankle all the way up to the top of his thigh like Jack Conklin does. It's certainly, probably some nervous times here and probably a really difficult spot to be in if you're Andy Dickerson. You're taking over for a legend like Callahan. You're taking over an offensive line that has always been really, really good. And right now, the outlook is, a little troublesome as, you're leading up to the opener on September 8th.
All right, before we go to break, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Hey guys, I'm watching this preseason game, and I know it's a preseason game, and I know you have new players, but to have 3 points and 3 quarters gone, which is something we do quite often under Kevin Stefanski, I'm sorry. I don't know why you would get an offensive coordinator, but then you would call the plays. I don't know what it is about him, but he feels that what he's doing is going to work so good. We had a good season last year, I agree, but man, there's 3 points all the time. You can't keep blaming it on the players. You got to blame it on the play caller, and I don't think he's putting them in the best position to win. Most of these players get batted down or whatever. They don't even have a chance, and it's just getting old. I want to hear what you guys got to say. Thanks. Bye.
It's a preseason game, and they didn't play any of their starters, and they're being exceptionally vanilla with their offense. Relative to an offensive coordinator calling, why would you have one that all the guys that are head coaches that are offensive minds call the plays with a different guy as the offensive coordinator. So that's nothing new. Matt LaFleur calls the plays. Sean McVay calls the plays. I mean, guys, that's the kind of offensive mind. That's why he got the job. So this whole play calling thing, we're already doing it week 1 of the preseason. That's my reaction to that.
I'm very much with you there, but I mean, look, they didn't run block well. They didn't pass block well. It was probably a mistake in hindsight to play Dorian Thompson-Robinson as the 3rd quarterback. Probably should have played him as the 2nd quarterback. So maybe when he was playing with a little bit better, talent around him, maybe he could have gotten a little bit more done. But look, ain't nobody going to get up in arms, certainly about a week 1 preseason game. And we all remember, Hugh Jackson going 4-0 in the preseason and basically everyone in the building telling him Deshaun Kaiser was not ready to be an NFL starting quarterback. And Hugh knew better than everybody, and that team proceeded to go 0-16. Look, it was a sour moment, and I think part of it is everyone just gets so excited. You waited so long, and then what did the game start at 4:25, and maybe already by 4:27 it was 7-0 Green Bay. But yeah, I mean, you're only as good football wise as probably what your offensive line can give you on the offensive side of the ball. They certainly got nothing from that, that group. Certainly, look, even if it's not their top players, something's got to give there, and some guys got to get a little better and probably, step it up here.
Jeff Lloyd and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, toast, Skrilla, chips, bread and mold, cheddar, butter, lewd and scratch. Find the letters, make a match. Lettuce, gravy, game on the back for $30. That's a wrap. There's many words for cash, no doubt, but there's only one $30 cash word. Check it out. Cash word from Ohio Lottery. It's $30 show. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions in prizes, don't you know?
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, it's Carl, come from Rochester. Okay, guys, preseason game number 1. By watching that, we need more than a wide receiver. I know what you guys are going to say. It's preseason and it doesn't mean much, but our offensive line couldn't block anybody. Our defensive line never touched the quarterback. These guys have to play when the other ones get hurt, and they will get hurt. They always do. That don't show much confidence, and we go after a wide receiver. Really? Okay, guys, have a good one. See it.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jeff, in most cases, these are the threes that we're playing. So these are the guys that are trying to get 50, 51, 52, 53 on your roster, in most cases.
Well, I mean, how many teams right now have a left tackle available to be had on the open market? How many teams have a defensive tackle available to be had on the opening market? When you're playing a game without your top 3 defensive tackles, you're playing a game without your top 2 offensive tackles, without your top offensive guard. I mean, I get it, but, some of this was done, and some of it was done just because guys didn't play. It's not like they don't have them. Shelby Harris is back at practice today. Dalvin Tomlinson should be ready to go for the opener. The wide receiver thing, is just resetting the clock. That's all that move was. It was trying to change out a 30-year-old wide receiver for a 26-year-old wide receiver, ideally with giving the money to the 26-year-old wide receiver that the 30-year-old is kind of hoping for. You're always looking out to improve your roster, but they're coming back, Jed Wills and Jack Conklin. So you're not going to go, make a trade for Trent Williams for 4 weeks and then call San Francisco up and say, we'll send him back now because we don't need him anymore. It's just not that easy, certainly, and it's certainly not feasible to get that type of stuff done now. Should they have maybe thought about looking towards a left tackle of the future, knowing that Jed Wills was most likely on his final year? Sure. And we talked a lot of draft tonight, talked a lot of offensive tackles with you guys. But they're where they're at right now. The key is just getting these guys back, and hopefully, they're healthy and they're pretty much fully ready to go. But my belief is they are. Otherwise, there would probably be some real more deep urgency if they needed somebody to play left tackle for 6 weeks.
Right, and to your point, they subbed out James Hudson there with the number 1s in practice today. So I think they probably saw enough of James Hudson at left tackle to know they really don't want to do that a whole lot more. And again, he's a guy that can play left and right, a swing tackle. We'll see.
He's a great extra tight end. I mean, he has a purpose. He's just not a starting left tackle in the NFL.
I know you addressed this on your show. Lost preseason openers, some moments and young players to be excited about. Take us through who you thought kind of flashed.
Well, I think if you go to most of the rookie class, which for me, that was what I was there to see. I mean, everybody wants to see their new toys on Christmas, so to speak. Mike Hall didn't really necessarily fill up the stat sheet, but you kind of get an idea and just you get a glimpse of what this team is talking about. And, I addressed this for years covering this team where it never seemed like they got any interior pass rush. You certainly got that last year a little bit, certainly from Maurice Hurst. You certainly got that from Dalvin Tomlinson. But you see how quick off the ball Mike Hall is. And, he had the battle with Myles Garrett the other day, getting off the ball and just how quick and athletic he is. Zach Zinter, I thought the pass pro was really, really good. Certainly some lapses in the run game blocking, but it's really hard to just point at one guy in run blocking because it really is kind of like a band mentality where everybody's got to play their instruments. But for the most part, Zach Zinter come out. I mean, we know he's not slated to start this year, but it wouldn't have been a stunner if Zach Center, went to a situation maybe where he was going to be a day one starter. Jamari Thrash, I think, really, really showed well, had a nice rapport, certainly with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Miles Harden is everywhere. He's a guy who just likes to get physical. He's into it. Everything that was on the tape at South Dakota, as far as him, being around the ball, being a chirpy D-back, being an active D-back. You saw all that. Bouquet Watson, you kind of, it wasn't much, but even the tackle for loss where he shot the gap and just basically blew the play up. You see some of the ability about how he was the leading tackler and the leading sacker last year in the SEC. So, for me, the guys I wanted to see, I wanted to see the rookies. And, there's going to be some bigger moments for these guys this year. So you kind of want to see him hit the ground running. But I think for the most part, that's kind of what you got to see. Javian Cohen played a lot as an undrafted free agent. The Browns have a lot of faith in. And they want to see where, he can go as far as his development. He actually started on Saturday. But those are the guys for me that drew the attention. And, that was probably for me one of the bright spots I think I took away from it. Because you want to see that these guys can maybe have, even if it's just small contributions, because you don't want to put a whole load on them yet. We're not talking about first-round picks, where they're guaranteed, and needed right out of the gate, coming in. But I really thought, you saw a path where if, there comes a time that these guys are called upon, they should be able to, deliver in some small capacity. Yes.
Yeah. The thing that I don't know about you, I was concerned with the lack of run defense. I think that I had to look it up. It seemed like they were just getting moved off the line of scrimmage repeatedly, and I think it was 4.6 yards a carry is what the Packers average. That can't happen.
No, and look, I mean, when you think about it, you think of, guys that did play as opposed to guys that didn't play. Dalvin Tomlinson is a huge part of their run defense. So Darius Smith is a very, very good at setting the edge. Myles Garrett has become a much, much better run defender as his career has gone on. He's just, put it more on himself. It's not all about trying to sack the quarterback every play. It's the understanding of, I got to set this edge because there is backside pursuit. And there are a lot of times the backside pursuit or the guys who are on block may have the easiest time to pursue the ball. But you also do keep in mind you were playing without, what are going to be your top two linebackers and JOK and, Jordan Hicks. So, yeah, but, and I think it also got to the point where maybe, the effort and maybe just got a little hot, guys got a little tired. But it seemed like Green Bay was pretty much kind of running at will. Yes.
Yeah, and again, that's obviously a concern. Jeff Lloyd and I are going to step aside, take another quick time out. On the side of the break, we'll hear from Deshaun Watson, his approach to training camp practices. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Deshaun Watson from QB Unplugged with his quarterback coach, Quincy Avery, just on how he approaches training camp practices.
It's just more just locking in on the task, following my reads. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, I always go back and refer back to the basics. What is the basis of this play? What is my reads? Is it a pin progression? Is it a PSL? Is it RPO? Is it PRO? Is it a pin progression with an option? Like, make the game simple as possible and get the ball into our receivers, our skilled guys' hands, and let them make plays. And that's the key, is to be able to get the ball into these guys' hands so they can make plays. Because we have a lot of guys that can have a lot of yak yards, and we just got to get them in space. And if I can make those decisions fast and play fast and just know, okay, I see the coverage, this is where I want to go with the ball, that's what I've been doing.
Jeff, the other thing, and you kind of alluded to it, he's kind of on a pitch count, almost like a pitcher because of the injury that he had, and it's coming from his doctor. They're meeting all the benchmarks. He will be in the ones during the joint practices, so he's right on schedule. I found that interesting because people freak out. Well, he threw an interception. He's doing some things to try to figure out, where does this guy like the ball? Can he do the back? Can he do the back shoulder? Can he do this? Can I fit that in here? So I take everything that happens in training camp in those practices. It's a learning thing for him.
Well, but the other thing is also, if you don't get the ball out at X amount of time during a training camp, basically a drill in 11 on 11, they're going to blow the play dead. So sometimes you're just throwing it for the sake of throwing it. It doesn't mean he's necessarily going to do that in a game. Either most likely he's going to roll out, look for a check down, and run the ball out of bounds. There's a million feasible things that he could do with the football. But sometimes in that scenario, before somebody blows a whistle, you just throw the ball for the sake of throwing the ball. And even still, though, guys need jump ball work. They do. Guys need to go up and battle against defensive backs. Defensive backs need to battle against wide receivers. You're not going to win, all of those. I think the thing that, that sticks out there for me is the mental aspect of it, knowing that this is the play we're running. This is the look defense should have. So I want the ball hot potato style out of my hand as quick as possible. And under this scenario, under this coverage, 9 times out of 10, Amari is my first read. Amari is most likely where the guy is going to get the ball. Oh, wait a minute. Now they kind of shifted the coverage. All of a sudden now maybe David Njoku is my read. Or all of a sudden, the coverage really, really shifted. And guess what? I'm going to look everybody off real quick and I'm going to throw it to a back out. And I think that's really the smart way to do it, because it always sounds silly when they talk about mental reps, but that basically is just what Deshaun Watson explained to you what mental rep is. It's I'm looking at the defense and I know where this play is. And, if this is the front I see, if this is the coverage I see, then that's who gets the ball. So, it's all just the act of, taking the snap and getting rid of the ball as quickly as possible. And everybody's up in arms. Look, they already said he could have played against Green Bay. They already going to let him play in the joint practices on Thursday. They said he could play against the Minnesota Vikings, even though he's not. He's going to play against the Seattle Seahawks. There is nothing holding him back. There has been nothing that held him back. Maybe every now and then they said, hey, Deshaun, that's a couple too many throws for today. Let's just shut it down and we'll see you again tomorrow. But as far as any concerns, worries, I think it's kind of like just something that people are trying to maybe either start up to make excuses for, God forbid, something goes wrong, or, just, again, people who just always want to find a way to, have some sort of issue with Deshaun Watson and his play.
The other thing I would say is what he's describing, those are things he does well. Identifies matchups. Those were not part of this offense. This was a timing and rhythm offense that doesn't allow you to do those things. So they were trying to fit him into an offense that didn't play to his strengths. So I get hammered about this new offense, and I get emails and I get voicemails and we get comments. That's what the offense is now. It is new in that it is allowing him to look at matchups and identify where he has an advantage and take advantage of it. And he does that really well.
Well, the thing now also is the personnel is upgraded. Jerry Jeudy is going to win a lot of battles. We already know what Amari Cooper and David Njoku can do. Jerome Ford is decent as a receiver out of the backfield. Naheem Hines, that is something he's really good at out of the backfield. Cedric Tillman is showing some really nice signs. Elijah Moore had 55 receptions. Whatever you want to say about him last year, he had more than 50 receptions. David Bell, who's going to be banged up and out for a little bit. David Bell, we always talk about, like, what is their calling card? What do they bring that nobody else does? David Bell kind of plays receiver like he was an ex-quarterback. Like, he has that sense of where the spot is, of where the ball should go. And although he's not very high on the pecking order, he seems to find himself in the spot where the ball should be when it is, his number is in fact called. And Jamari Thrash, you build off a 3 for 43 in your first preseason game, probably going to get his number called a bunch more here, certainly against the Vikings, certainly against the Seattle Seahawks. And, the more you put together, the more they're willing to use you. So for a guy like Jamari Thrash, who caught a boatload of balls in college, hit the ground running here, and, that starts to build everybody's confidence in you. And look, if the Browns can find a way to use all these receivers, that's good, because it obviously means that every one of them is capable of doing something. Every one of them is a little bit different, although they are a lot of the same. They do have some of the same characteristics as far as route running. But I think the talent is really upgraded here, which should 100% increase the confidence of Deshaun Watson, because he's going to have open guys, probably multiple open guys, as long as he can just get through his progressions as quickly as he should be able to.
All right, so this is from the Bleacher Report. Projected winners of key position battles. This is for the Browns. Number 3 wide receiver. They say the projected winner is Elijah Moore. Thrash may have the most potential of this group, but may lose out, at least in week 1, to Moore. Takeover of the 3 wide receiver position may not occur until midseason. Linebacker, they say Devin Bush, projected winner. Devin Bush currently holds the edge over the reserves at this position as long as he keeps up his effort from preseason, should lock down the starting job. Number 3 running back, when everyone is healthy, Pierre Strong may be fighting for a roster spot behind Jerome Ford, Dante Foreman, and Naheem Hines right now. Browns can only rely on the available bodies in training camp. Projected winner, Pierre Strong. What little we saw of Devin Bush, I thought he looked pretty good against the Packers. He kind of reminded you, hey, I was a pretty high draft pick and played well in my rookie year.
Well, and that's what I kind of said about Devin Bush is Devin Bush should have looked really well. He should have looked good. He was a former first-round pick, former 100-tackle guy. So that is start of your, trying to build back up your NFL resume. Now when you think about it, when he gets on the field, he will be playing with JOK. He will be playing with Jordan Hicks. So, yeah, I mean, you talk about a guy, he should fit in with that group as long as the body, health-wise, physically is still where it should be. You talk about the number 3 wide receiver. I don't think it's really going to be a set thing because I really think this team has high hopes for what Cedric Tillman has done. I think they also love the fact that if they need to rotate a receiver out, and we've seen this with Amari in the past, Amari is a guy that it takes a lot of dings and takes a lot of punishment. So, if he would like to come off the field for a snap or two, there's nothing wrong with having Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, David Bell, Jamari Thrash. So I think maybe that number 3 wide receiver is probably, I don't know if anybody's really going to just claim a role because I think Cedric Tillman's going to get a lot of opportunities as well. The running backs, it's going to be tough. But the thing that Pierre Strong has, certainly that nobody else in that running back room does, is he's got the long speed. But there's problems with Pierre Strong where all of a sudden it looks like he's got wide open yardage, and all of a sudden, slips, trips, falls, whatever. And we all know that there were ball security issues last year with Pierre Strong. There's a lot of talent within the body of Pierre Strong. Maybe some of those things would become refined if he got the opportunity to probably play more. But again, you fumble, nobody's going to say, oh, well, let's let him play his way through it. You go 50, 60 touches without incident, then people are right. Well, let's get, up of his workload as opposed to 5 to 10 touches a week. But that's got to become more, it's got to go more on Pierre himself. But that running back room, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I know Foreman finally got some work in it today after his injury threat about a week and a half ago. But that whole running back room, I mean, it's just names and guys until number 24 returns.
Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast, and now I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, folks. Which of our Browns players should be preseason candidates for a Pro Bowl run this year? I've heard a number of times this is one of, if not the best roster in football, minus the quarterback. And Deshaun Watson, I think he's being underestimated by the outside sports media. Should he be under consideration, as he is surrounded by plenty of weapons and talent, along with an elite defense to give them the ball in more manageable situations? Granted, the team record at the end of the year is going to be a factor. Let's go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, when I think of guys, I think Delpit, I think JOK, I think Emerson, and I think Njoku. Those are the guys that kind of jump out at me as guys that could very well be Pro Bowlers?
Yeah, I got to be honest. It's a really, really difficult thing to think about right now, honestly. And I don't want any of my players to be going to the Pro Bowl. I would rather them have much more important plans the week after.
Yeah.
But sure, you think Miles, you think probably, Joel Bitonio, if he goes out there and he plays, just with the capabilities he has. JOK was there last year. Denzel Ward's been there several years. Martin Emerson seems like the guy that's really, really close to being anointed as a really, really top player at the cornerback position. So certainly that could happen for him. It wouldn't be out of the realm, certainly, for Amari Cooper to maybe go and do it again. But those are conversations that are probably months and months away here. We're still trying to, make sure we can find a way to get the best 53 guys on the field that we can for the Dallas Cowboys on September 8th.
All right, so this is from ESPN's First Take today. Harry Douglas, Dan Orlovsky, Damian Woody, 3 former players debating which AFC North quarterback is under the most pressure.
We can want the 2020 version of Deshaun Watson, but I'm here to tell everyone we're not getting that version of Deshaun Watson. I'm sorry. So at some point, reality has to sink in. Reality has to sink in at some point.
So what made you pick Justin Fields and Russell Wilson? What have those guys shown you that they should have any type of expectation?
Let me tell you this. I do know this about Pittsburgh. If you get good quarterback play, I view them in a different light. I view them as contending. If you get good quarterback play,
Cleveland? Talking about Harry.
If you get good quarterback play,
they went to the playoffs last year.
Okay,
Harry,
Dan.
Cleveland
So did the Cleveland Browns, and they got mollywopped in the playoffs. What's your point?
That's what I'm talking about when I say they went to the playoffs. You said if they get good quarterback play, they're a legit contender. You don't feel that way about Cleveland when they just did it with Joe? That's what I'm saying.
I didn't say they wasn't a contender. Who do you trust more? Do you trust Mike Tomlin or you trust Kevin Stefanski more, Dan? Tell me who you trust more.
Kevin Stefanski's a 2-time coach of the year.
So what? He hasn't won a dang old thing, Dan. Who do you trust more, Stefanski or Mike Tomlin? Answer the question.
Both. They're both great coaches.
Don't tell me about what he's a 2-time coach of the year. He ain't won a doggone playoff game. Or maybe he won one.
Well, Harry, Mike Tomlin's record without Ben Roethlisberger, if you look down to those last 2 years, is 19-15. Roethlisberger was 29-11 in the 3 years before Tomlin came head coach, and Watson's 8-4 as a starter with the Browns. So, Harry, I'm sorry, you're misinformed. That's just a moronic argument. Again, that guy played, but he's got an agenda, clearly.
The Browns' playoff win was in Pittsburgh against the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, come on. And then now, you just went and did it again this year. And, you can't trust Kevin Stefanski, and, Pittsburgh didn't have great quarterback play. Kevin Stefanski had to play with 5 quarterbacks last year and still find a way to get his team to 11 wins. I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and, and if you're going to choose off of longevity, maybe, Mike Tomlin wins. But Mike Tomlin hasn't won a playoff game since 2017. So that means, there were children who weren't even born yet who were probably going to 2nd or 3rd grade by now since the last time the Pittsburgh Steelers won a playoff game. It seems very interesting that, everybody tells, nobody lets Cleveland Browns fans talk about, the old AFL days when they were good. Those days aren't allowed to be talked about. But now that the Cleveland Browns are relevant, it has to go back to 25 years ago. Nobody can talk about the last season or the last 2 or 3 seasons or even the last 4 seasons, where Kevin Stefanski, shocking enough, has a winning record. It's just, it does always seems, and it's Cincinnati, we want to annoy them, but there's no Super Bowl trophies in Cincinnati either. Baltimore. Well, every year we hear the same thing, and then they get into late January, and it's a slow and methodical fade away. As great as the AFC North is, if you want to say it's maybe flawed and somebody needs to step up for this division and maybe get it to a championship game, win a championship game, represent this division by going to the Super Bowl, that's fair. But I think a lot of right now, it's a lot of, Spider-Man memes where any one of these teams can make the case to being the best in the division. And because they're all really damn good, that means any one of these teams could technically also be the worst team in the division.
Yeah, you know what? The Steelers are due for some quarterback mediocrity. They had it so good for so long.
Well, and even the way that was covered, George Pickens runs 2 yards. Fields throws him a ball. He picks up 7. oh, looking in midseason form. 2 plays later, 3 plays, the next 3 plays, he fumbles twice. That's not the part anybody talks about.
No,
But then when you get to Tomlin's the one who was irate. Like, the one thing we talked about this guy was ball security,
Yeah.
and there's the ball all over the field.
Well, and you know what? I used to get voicemails, emails, texts from Steelers fans last year, and I told them Kenny Pickens looks an awful lot like the quarterbacks I've seen play. I don't get it.
If anybody would know, Dave, it would be us.
Exactly. You guys, I'm telling you right now, Russell Wilson in this iteration, Justin Fields in the iteration that we've seen of him so far, he's a mediocre quarterback. We have a PhD in mediocre quarterbacks here with the Browns. Deshaun Watson, also from QB Unplugged, talked about this year's offense.
A lot of moving parts, but a lot of fun and a lot of different options. Our offense is definitely going to stretch the field vertically and the width of the field too. You know what I'm saying? And so we're gonna have, our key is to have the defense, have to guard the whole field, and you don't know who's gonna get the ball. It's not primary guys. Everyone can touch the ball, and we want to rotate guys in and play fast and score a lot of points.
And Jeff, when they rotate guys in, what they're looking for is matchups. You can't cover all of them if they're all pretty decent, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the weakest link on the defense.
Well, and this is, and watching a lot of San Francisco over the last couple of years, this was one thing. Now, when you look to basically, like, you go to a still frame, or when Brock Purdy's ready to throw the ball, there's a wide receiver down the field 35 yards to the left. There is somebody all the way 15 yards down the field on the right side of the field, right at the out of bounds marker. There's somebody settled over the middle. Then there's usually somebody running a crosser over that. It's trying to basically say, we're going to throw everything at you at once. You can't cover a 9. You can't cover a post. You can't cover a deep out. You can't cover, a slant or you can't cover all these routes at the same time. There's no way any defense can physically do it. Granted, it takes a lot on your quarterback to be able to quickly decipher into which route is going to be the one where he's going to make his money. But it's what you're trying to do. It's basically like running fast break in basketball. Not everything. You're not going to be able to contain everything, but you just have to have the intelligence, basically through scouting, know who the weak links are. This guy doesn't cover this route very well. That's the matchup we're looking for. But yeah, and that's why, you rip apart a wide receiver room over the better part of 2 years and basically rebuild it top to bottom. And you've got a great route runner, Amari Cooper, another great route runner who's faster than Jerry Jeudy, a big, tall, vertical guy in Cedric Tillman, a Smurf guy who's got great quickness in Elijah Moore, a guy who's just steady like Jamari Thrash, and a really, really smart guy who just knows where the open hole is in his zone coverage like David Bell. That's why you put this type of work into it. So you can basically just say, we want to attack. And the biggest reason you have to do that is because you don't know when your best skill player is going to join your team.
Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
All the best, guys. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Jeff Lloyd, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff on the Locked On Browns podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus. When we return, stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, toast, Skrilla, chips, bread and mold, cheddar, butter, lewd and scratch. Find the lettuce, make a match. Lettuce, gravy, game on the back for $30. That's a wrap. There's many words for cash, no doubt, but there's only one $30 cash word. Check it out. Cash word from Ohio Lottery. It's $30 show. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions of prizes, don't you know?
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. This is from ESPN's First Take. Dan Orlovsky and some guy named Joe were debating the AFC North and who's under the most pressure. Listen to Dan Orlovsky on the Browns.
If Cleveland had Tua as their starting quarterback, would you label them a legit Super Bowl contender?
No.
You're out of your mind. You're absolutely out of your mind. If they had Trevor Lawrence, legit Super Bowl contender?
No. I'm looking
You're
at
out of
the
your mind,
schedule and the way things set up. This is a team that's already banged up on the offensive line. Problem number one. Problem number two, what's going on at the running back position? Nick Chubb isn't going to be ready to start the season. The depth there is problematic. Number three, defensively. They brought in Mike Vrabel. He's helping out more on the offensive side of the ball. He's going to assist Jim Schwartz. But you have to remember, that was the #1 scoring defense at home last year. They were dead last on the road last season. It was predictable, and they got exposed in Houston. There's pressure on Watson, sure.
Let's welcome in Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus. Max, did you see the look on Dan Orlovsky's face as he was listening to that? Couple of things. You can never predict, the schedule game is a real dangerous thing because you have no idea how injuries are going to affect it. The Browns' offensive line, yeah, it's a concern, but those guys are coming back. I wouldn't rule Nick Chubb out so quickly. This guy just... You could say that about any team in football right now. You want me to make the argument about the Ravens? They have a new defensive coordinator. Lamar Jackson can't win in the playoffs. Steelers, banged up offense. Well, bunch of rookies on the offensive line that they're counting on. Their quarterback position is middling. Bengals, Joe Burrow can't stay healthy. He's only finished 2 of the 4 seasons he's played. Their wide receiving core, Jamar Chase hasn't practiced yet. I mean, you can do that about any team in the NFL. I could do it about every team.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting argument to make. I would say that if they had a better quarterback, they absolutely would be one of the top contenders in the AFC, so I think you could call him a Super Bowl contender for sure. He does make some good points. According to our power rankings, the Browns actually do have the hardest schedule in the NFL right now. And that defense is absolutely elite as well, too. So I think with that defense and, the big question mark is that quarterback with Deshaun Watson, whether or not he can be who he was with the Texans. But, I would say I'm a little bit in between right now. Right? I think the Browns are a really good team. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. But I do think with a brand new quarterback, they would be a lot better of a team for sure.
Yeah, the other thing is they've revamped the offense. So I would just say wait and see what the offense looks like. It's no longer the timing offense that it was with Kevin Stefanski. They're going more 3 wides and opening it up. Let's go to this. Highest graded Browns in the preseason opener. PFF tweets this out. So you got linebacker Watson, Chris Williams, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Martin Emerson, who only played a few snaps, Jordan Akins. When you looked at the grades, who kind of opened your eyes? Who did you think showed pretty well for the Browns in that preseason opener?
Yeah, I hate to go with the obvious there with Nathaniel Watson, right? I mean, it's his debut as a Cleveland Brown, debut in the NFL as a rookie linebacker for them. And I don't expect him to be a starting player for the Browns, but I think he's going to be a really good depth piece as a rotational linebacker for them because I think you got guys like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Jordan Hicks, Devin Bush. He's probably going to be behind them on the depth chart, but I do expect him to make a good rotation spot on that defense. And I think that first preseason game was very promising from the rookie.
What do you think of Dorian Thompson-Robinson? I know it was late, and he's playing with the backups against backups. That's a guy that's in his second year, though.
Yeah, I think that was really key for him. I think he's battling for a job right now, right? Because you have guys like Jameis Winston as your backup quarterback. You got Tyler Huntley there as well. So I think Dorian Thompson-Robinson is really battling Huntley for that number 3 quarterback spot, and we'll see who it ends up going to at the end of the day. But it really might depend on who performs the best in the preseason. And as of right now, the advantage goes to DTR, who was the higher graded of the two in that game. So I think that's key for him. And I think he's, like I said, he's fighting for a spot in the roster right now as a number 3 quarterback. And he's going to have to beat out Tyler Huntley for that job. And performances like these are going to really help him do that.
Do you think whomever is on the wrong side of that finds a way? It seems to me like both of these guys can play in the NFL, both Thompson-Robinson and Huntley.
Yeah, definitely. I think whoever doesn't get that job, the Browns will hope to keep them probably on the practice squad. But if not, I mean, there's someone, they're going to be scooping them up immediately. I don't imagine that both those guys won't be on NFL rosters this upcoming season. It would just be practice squad players. I don't think either of them are that bad, should I say, to be practice squad players. I think one of them, whoever loses the job, will end up on another roster as one of the backup quarterbacks for sure, I think.
This one's from Total Pro Sports. Final off-season grades for every NFL team. The Browns, they say a B. Jerry Jeudy was one of the top wide receivers coming out of the draft. For whatever reason, it just didn't seem to work in Denver. But that's kind of risk to be taking for this team, which needs to bolster its offense in the NFL to complement its beastly D. What do you think about that? I mean, Judy's a guy that you kind of scratch your head and wonder, man, he was really good coming out. I thought he was going to be one of the elite wide receivers, and just hadn't happened yet.
Yeah, I think B is around what I'd say for the Browns this offseason. We actually gave them a B- over at Pro Football Focus. So this wasn't really a splashy offseason outside of the Jerry Jeudy trade, which then again, like he's been kind of disappointing over the last few years at Denver. But they added, guys that can help them on that defense and on that offense as well. But I think their draft was okay. And of course, not having a first-round pick will affect that draft too. But they did a decent job of addressing some needs in that draft. They lost some key players like Anthony Walker and Sione Takitaki. So overall, it was a fine offseason for the Browns. I don't think they really did anything too great, but I don't think they did anything too terrible either. So I think a B- is probably what I'd say for the Browns this offseason.
What do you think? Do you think the change of scenery helps Jerry Jeudy? Is that something that you think he needed?
Yeah, I think it was getting toxic in Denver for sure. I think that he and Russell Wilson clearly did not work well together at all. And obviously Russ is gone now too. But I just don't think he was really utilized in Denver that much. And we'll see what he can do now with Deshaun Watson and Cleveland. And he right now is not the number 1 receiver on that team, obviously, with Amari Cooper there too. So I think as a number 2 receiver for the team, he's probably gonna be relied on a little bit more. And he always kind of felt to me like an underutilized player in Denver, and hopefully he gets more of a run in Cleveland now.
Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, toast, Skrilla, chips, bread and mold, cheddar, butter, lewd and scratch. Find the letters, make a match. Lettuce, gravy, game on the back for $30. That's a wrap. There's many words for cash, no doubt, but there's only one $30 cash word. Check it out. Cash word from Ohio Lottery. It's $30 show. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions in prizes, don't you know?
We continue talking Browns with Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. I ain't too crazy about these rumors with Aiyuk. That guy ain't no proven number 1. He was like the 3rd or 4th option out of the Niners. Save that money and go out and get T. Higgins next year. I'm done with an experiment, we're looking to the future. No, now's the future. They got to get everything in core. Why upset the locker room? They say this dude might be a cancer in the locker room, and, well, we're witnessing this right here. But, yeah, I'm not a big fan of that trade, Dave. Thank you for taking my call. Love you, brother. You and the family be safe, and I'll be in touch.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Max, I hesitate with the whole cancer in the locker room. Everybody wants to – NFL guys have a short shelf life to their career. They want to get paid. I get it. Now, having said that, I'm not sure, if you take Aiyuk and you take away Kittle and you take away Christian McCaffrey and you take away Deebo Samuel, again, he's a really good player. I'm not sure his production doesn't suffer.
Yeah, I think his production will suffer. I think clearly it's a worse situation offensively in Cleveland than it is in San Francisco. I don't think there's really any up for debate for that. But I do think Brandon Aiyuk is a really good player, and I think he's a top 10 receiver in the NFL right now. So I would make that trade in a heartbeat from the Browns, depending on what they give up, right? And obviously, you got to pay Brandon Aiyuk as well. But I think he's a better receiver than Amari Cooper, for example. I think he's better than T. Higgins, like the caller brought up as well. Yeah, I think Brandon Aiyuk, it's very rare for a top 10 receiver in the NFL to come on the open market like this, really. So I think the Browns would be wise to be one of the teams, and it seems like they're one of the teams that are really trying to vie for his services right now.
And again, the thought behind doing that for the Browns, and I go back and forth with whether I think they should try to get Aiyuk. They're trying to reset the clock on the wide receiver room. You know, he's 4 years younger than Cooper, so you extend the shelf life that you're giving your franchise quarterback, an elite wide receiver. And yeah, I'm with you. I don't think he's top 5, but I think he's in that next range. That was kind of where I was going with that. And again, I don't know how. I would think it would be interesting to see if you didn't have the elite skill players around him, how good. You know, you throw him next to George Pickens. I don't know how that's going to work for him. I really don't.
Yeah, I think there's two sides of that, right? I think one is that you can look at it and say, okay, you have Deebo Samuel, you got Christian McCaffrey, you got George Kittle. You just can't commit 2 guys to Brandon Aiyuk on every play. So in that sense, he is an advantage in San Francisco, but also you could also argue against that and say it's a disadvantage because all of a sudden you got more mouths to feed on that team, right? So you can say if Aiyuk is in a situation where he's clearly the top option, he could put up huge numbers, right, as well. So it's two sides of the coin, really, with that, too. So I think Brandon Aiyuk is the best receiver the 49ers have on that roster, even above Deebo Samuel. Probably the best pass catcher they have on that roster, too, even above George Kittle. So, yeah, I think Brandon Aiyuk is a really, really good player. And like I said, I think he's a top 10 receiver in the NFL. And those just don't come around on the open market very often, right? So I think Brandon Aiyuk, it makes sense why there's a lot of teams trying to go after him and pay him really whatever he wants.
All right, Martin Emerson met with the media today. Talked to kind of the mindset of the Browns secondary this year.
We built our standard early on last year. You know, the standard is the standard. We feel like, but we know we are the best cornerbacks in the league. So we just got to put it on tape and prove it, you know, and just come out here every day. You know, we try not to allow no catches and just try to get better at everything we do, you know. And ultimately, our position is to shut down the receiver that's, you know, the quarterback intending to throw the ball to. So that's our job, you know, so we don't want to give up no passes and just make the defense stronger.
Max, I guess the question, how good is the secondary of the Browns, cornerbacks in particular?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I like Denzel Ward, right? I think he's a really good corner. He's one of the better ones that we have in the NFL. We actually rank the Browns as having the 6th best secondary in the NFL heading into this upcoming season. So you got Denzel Ward, who's hopefully going to be fully healthy. You know, he's battled some injuries over the last couple of years. Greg Newsome, I really like as well in that cornerback room. Martin Emerson is a really good player as well. So I think those three, they have a really good quarterback trio of Newsome and Emerson and Denzel Ward. And then obviously you got Grant Delpit and Juan Thornhill at safety. It's a pretty solid duo too. So yeah, I think the Browns have definitely one of the top 10 secondaries in the NFL right now.
All right, this is from ESPN.com, preseason week 1 takeaways from each NFL team. They say it was a quiet afternoon for Mike Hall Jr., played 29 defensive snaps, recorded only 1 assisted tackle, but on a 3rd down play showed the pass rush skills the Browns like in his potential. Lined up over the right guard, swim move to get past his block and converge on the quarterback. Preseason games are so hard to judge because you've got, you know, are you going against the ones? Are you going against the 2s? If you play late enough, you're going against guys that probably aren't going to be on NFL rosters. Hall's, especially on the line, those are tough things to read, especially early in preseason.
Yeah, definitely. If you look at the PFF grades right now, he didn't really play great. I'll say that. He had a 49.3 grade in his first game. So sorry about that. But I think you look at the run D, you look at the pass rush. I think, you know, he's a guy that can definitely get better. But I think that right now, that first preseason game, he didn't play great in his first game. So I would say Michael Hall Jr. is certainly a lot of room for improvement. But the good thing about him is that he's not going to be probably relied on to be a starter immediately with guys like Shelby Harris there and Dalvin Tomlinson, even Maurice Hurst and Quentin Jefferson ahead of him, maybe on the depth chart too. So he won't be relied on immediately, even though he was the first draft pick for the Browns. But I think that he's a guy who's going to be a solid player long term, but it definitely was kind of a forgettable preseason week 1 for him.
Yeah, they're going to look to use him in specific down in distances and situations where he can hopefully get one-on-ones and take advantage of them. That's kind of how they've targeted him.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think that he's going to be a long-term play for them. And I think that's something that is really promising. And again, I love the fact that he's not going to be relied on to be an instant starter or an instant contributor for them. So I think that he's going to be a good player long term, but he needs some time to develop. And we kind of knew that coming out of Ohio State too. He needs some time to develop.
Max Chadwick, Pro Football Focus, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Max.
Of course. Thanks, guys. Max
Chadwick, make sure you check him out. Always good stuff. Pro Football Focus. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll be back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.